Hello. Hello.
All right, here we go. Confidence Conversations with Idara. And today I get to talk to Naana Badu-Pettigrew of Badu Basics. And before I get into the background, your career story, the main three ways that Badu Basics works with people has to do with public speaking, having an opportunity to speak in different public engagements, speaking engagements, corporate training, which is such an important part of spread, as well as brand consulting. So Badu Basics is about those three elements. Before focusing on Badu Basics, Naana, you'd already been in management consulting as well as change management consulting. And in general, having that ability to kind of take a step back, that skill to look and see what do we have, what do we need, where's the gap, and helping people to bridge that communication gap. In some ways, that skill also shows up in the work that you do now. So we're not even talking brand new. I was looking back to see when this management consulting started, as far back as 2004, with major organizations, management consulting, change management consulting, already an impressive career. But also that Badu Basics, this work overlapped with that. So please tell us a bit more about that journey and transition to Badu Basics.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, Idara. Appreciate it.
Pleasure to have you.
Yes. It's so interesting how life works and how things can serendipitously align for you to arrive at the destination that you are within your career. So, like you mentioned, I started in management consulting for my professional career back in 2004 when I graduated from undergrad. And, I just knew I was going to be, this corporate woman traveling through the airports with my briefcase and my suit and my heels, and was just going to be loving my corner office life, right? And I did a lot of that travel for a good many years, and I started to feel burnt out, right? There was amazing clients, amazing teams that I was working with, but I was also working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And so I was definitely craving something else in my profession and in my career, but I didn't know exactly what that was. I had an inkling it had to do with something creative, right? And so there was a friend of mine who was a singer, and she approached me one day with her manager and asked if I would be the stylist for a photo shoot that they were doing for the release of her new album. And, this is a longtime friend of mine from college. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'm happy to do that, But I was also like, well, what exactly do you want me to do as the stylist? Because this is 2008, pre-Instagram, pre-TikTok. The internet is not what it is today. And so in my mind, and in perhaps the minds of folks who might be listening to this, the only thing I know about stylists were celebrity stylists, red carpet, Hollywood, that kind of thing. And so I was like, okay, help me understand exactly what I need to get done. Because also too, the consultant in me is like, what's the deliverable? What's the outcome? What do you need me to get to it? What do you need? And so they told me about it. We did a brainstorming session with the photographer, vision boarding. I was like, this sounds fantastic. So I did all the shopping for my friend. We did the photo shoot, and I was like, this is fantastic.
Nice.
I love the creativity, the collaboration, like the independent element, and then of course the styling component, which was something that I enjoyed just in expressing myself in the way that I showed up. Right? In college, I like to wear different outfits, and friends would come to me and ask me, oh, how do you put that outfit together? What earrings should I wear with this and that? Which is how that friend, approached me about styling her photo shoot. And so, that element of showing up and expressing myself through style just continued to carry itself through,
Mm-hmm.
even
Mm-hmm.
in the workplace, right? And so I would go to work and I'd wear a navy suit, but my parents are from Ghana, and so I'd wear a headband.
Mm-hmm.
Or my mom just came back from a trip and had these great earrings, so I'd throw some of that jewelry in the mix. Or I'd
Mm-hmm.
wear a black blazer, but I had pink pants.
Yep, pop of color.
There was always a pop of color,
Mm-hmm.
a pop of energy, some statement earrings, something outside of the norm.
Mm-hmm.
And this also became part of the calling card of just who I am as a professional, as a communicator, as someone in change management who's known for building different relationships with her teams and navigating different conversations with senior level leaders. But it was notorious when I would come into the room, people would be like, oh, your energy, it just aligns so much with what I see and what I get as well from you in your work. And, of course, now I can say that 20 years later, because I understand that that's, an inkling to personal branding at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But at that
Mm-hmm.
time, I wasn't connecting those dots. I just thought, just Naana, this is just me. This is just
Yeah,
how
yeah,
I am.
yeah.
I'm just showing up, right? And so even in still doing that and being in a corporate setting, and still having this other opportunity with my friend that came up, was a really happy fusion of both worlds and both of my talents and skills. And so after that photo shoot, I basically got thrown into starting my business because the photographer started referring me
Mm.
to other clients. And, people are asking me, do you have your EIN and how should we bill you? And I'm like, people, I don't do this. I have a regular job, but I'm like, but I will figure it out. So a
Yeah.
lot of late nights, and Barnes and Nobles and reading, how to start your business for dummies, if everybody remembers that series
Yeah,
of
yeah.
education, right? But a lot of that and yeah, and that threw me into entrepreneurship and starting Badu Basics.
I just love the organic nature of how this started. That also came with pressure. So it
Mm.
was not as easy for you to opt out, which can happen so easily, especially if it's something that you enjoy and that comes naturally to you.
Mhm.
You have what you consider to be work, which often feels like work. And that becomes the association that it's work, it's challenging, and it's not necessarily enjoyable.
Right.
And to have just pure joy and excitement about all elements of it is not, and part of your story is looking at the contrast between today and 20 years ago. The context of it matters as well. We didn't have some of the words and the language that we have today and that we use today. So
Mhm.
work usually felt very much looked like work. It was not necessarily enjoyable. It was often exhausting, came with challenges, sacrifices, and so on. And here you're describing something that was enjoyable, fulfilling, something that you were already doing. You didn't market it, but someone came to you to talk about this thing that you deemed as me, maybe my personality, and she's calling it out like skill, like value, something that should be paid for. I love that story of how this came to be and also how early in your career that it showed up.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Because I mean, if it wasn't for, my friend seeing something in me that I didn't even
Mm-hmm.
see, right? And approaching me in that way, I wouldn't have thought about it, that could be the lane. I think even in and around that time, I was thinking, oh, well, maybe I will go to, get another degree and maybe I could go to FIT or Parsons in New York. And at this time I was in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area,
Mm-hmm.
right? I was looking at, oh, how could I take my skills in change management and communications and project management and move that over into the fashion industry, right? So I was applying for jobs as buyers at Macy's and
Mm-hmm.
Donna Karen, and they were like, no, nice declining messages because they didn't understand, my skills in that industry and how that could transfer
Translate.
over.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Um, So yeah, a lot of different factors around it. Why it's a different time, but I think if you're still open to how things can happen, right? And not just quenching the fire and saying, well,
Mm-hmm.
I tried once and it didn't
Yes.
work. So forget about that, right? But still also sharing your talent and allowing people to see it, right? You just never know who's going to present you with an opportunity.
Yeah.
Will get you on the path.
And talking about the different ways in which you did the responsible thing, actively looking to transfer these skills in this structured and understood way is part of that journey. There was what you were trying to do, but it sounds like what really helped was you're not resisting the flow element of it. You were doing the logical thing. Okay, if I've done these skill sets, they transfer in this way, and here's where that might be a natural continuity. But you ended up carving out a completely different path and doing this work. You're mentioning FIT reminds me that that is part of your story too, that you've not only done this work, but you're an instructor and have taken the time to articulate and transfer these skills to others. So what other aspects of your career have I not covered in talking about this introduction, or have we not touched on yet? Starting with just the instruction, how you got formally into instruction.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, having come out of this photo shoot and starting to get referrals and starting my business, I was just really starting to understand personal styling and doing a lot of photo shoots,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I was doing a lot of commercial photo shoots. So I was doing things like Just for Me and different musicians and doing those kinds of things for on-camera work. But the styling industry is really vast. There's a lot of different arms to it. So, which I didn't know, but learned, right? So as I was doing this kind of work, I still in my day job was like, I'm looking for more. So I had an opportunity to move across the country to California for a new role, still in the change management consulting
Mm-hmm.
space. But when I was in this role, I had a manager, and she was also a fellow Black woman. And, she was amazing, hands down, still a good mentor and friend and client to this day. But one day she approached me and she said, Nana, I think I need your help. And so I said, sure, what's happening? And she said, I'm going for a promotion this year. And I really need some help with my executive presence when it comes to my wardrobe.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I think, is that something you could help me with? I was like, absolutely. Right. So we did this whole what not to wear inspired experience, cleaned out her closet, did shopping for her, and she just showed up. Right. She continuously showed up with a new level of confidence in her appearance and in just, the way that she embraced her presence. And of course, she got the promotion, not just because of that, but because she is a phenomenal leader. But people notice the difference, right? And so then after some time, people were start asking questions like, what's been going on with you? And she said, oh, I worked with Nana. And people were like, she does this, right? Because again, I was broadcasting this. I'm like,
Right.
I was very separate of like, I have a day job. And then like occasionally on a weekend or something, I might have a styling project.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But after that, again, then referrals came, right? And she was referring me to other people. And so I started to work with other leaders within the consulting space. And then another light bulb went off. And I was like, okay, so there's this editorial side of styling, but there's a very personal, relatable side of styling for the everyday working woman who wants to feel confident in how she carries herself and is really looking for ways that she can level up her executive presence, right? And feel really strong about how she enters and maintains a room. And so I dove deeper into that space and started learning more about image consulting. And image consulting really pulls in these elements of understanding someone's lifestyle and their personal and professional goals in order to align their wardrobe and their total image for that kind of career success. Um, and so I said, okay, this is the space I want to get into. And FIT offered an image consulting certificate program. And so that was definitely an inspirational element for me deciding, you know what, this is it. I'm going to move to New York City, fashion capital. I think this is the place I need to be in order to really make all of this sing and work together. And so I did that. So I moved to New York City. I went to FIT, I got my image consulting certification. And then I started to connect with more professionals, other image consultants and personal stylists in the business. And that was great. It was great and really important, right? To be connected to a peer group that understood the clients, the experience, the delivery, you know, all of the ins and outs of our industry in particular. So yeah, it's you know, again, you just when you sit back, and it's always great to kind of, you know, sit back. And I love, you know, moments like this because you need a moment to pause and reflect and look back at your career.
Absolutely.
Put things in perspective.
And as you were saying it, I was hoping that you were also hearing just the incredible journey that it's been. So beyond doing the certificate, you then became part of that instruction team, which adds an additional lens to the students. You know, we often hear the expression representation matters, and it's so true, because by you showing up as yourself and doing the things that come naturally, make sense, and even the things that challenge you a bit, but you doing it in an authentic way, helps someone else to see themselves because they see a part of themselves in you, and it may not have been something that they encountered before. Being in community, being around other people, but to the extent that you're there as you, someone else who has that connection is hearing it and seeing it and inspired or motivated to take that next step, to do that thing, even if it was something they thought about before, maybe abandoned. Now it's more of, Naana is doing this. I think I can, including traveling across the country to be in the space where this makes sense to you. So you've told a story of being responsive, of boldness, courage, just being brave, because that something makes sense doesn't mean that there's a guarantee on the other end of it. You know, it was still a chance that you were taking, but you've done all the responsible things. Let me apply here and do this and follow this all the way through. So it's a story of being responsive, using resources, but also bravery. Really, that's the braveness to step out of the courage is a more common word that we use, but no guarantees. Let me go to this thing. So it's been beautiful to hear your story, and I'm sure I'd hear it again and hear something else in it. But I love that we've created this moment of pause and just honoring the journey that you've taken to here. So,
thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. You mentioned the word confidence. That was the connection here. Even connecting was about confidence. I saw a post of yours on LinkedIn where you did a before and after and shared the story of getting from here to here, the significance of it. And the number one strategy in my book, The Confidence Talk I Said So, is suit up. Because the way that you show up and how you feel about how you're showing up is one of the quickest confidence boosters that you can leverage, one of the quickest. And we've used confidence in a number of different ways. Confidence as an outcome of the service that you provided, what people are looking for, and so on. How would you define or describe confidence?
Yeah, you know, confidence is, for me, like an unwavering conviction, right? Like at its earnest and at its core, you are 10 toes deep and you are able to really believe, right? You really believe in your purpose, your knowledge, your skill set, right? You believe, and you know, I'm supposed to be here, and you know that it's impactful and it brings value and it has meaning to it, right? Just your sheer presence, right? Like alone. Because I know it's tough, and we can sometimes get really caught in the titles and the degrees and the accomplishments and the salaries and and all of these things, right? And listen, and I say this, we talk about this reflected right back at me, same, right? Guilty,
Yep.
right? But I think that there becomes a point when it's really important to recognize how the confidence is so much more for you than it is for others,
Yes.
right? And that there's outside validation that is sought after, right? External validation. But when you internally, something starts switching in your mindset and in your spirit, and you start to think like, no, actually, like, I am excellent at XYZ. Then things begin to shift in how you speak, how you stand, in your body language, how you talk about yourself, right? How you engage in conversations, how you see opportunities, how you see setbacks and quote unquote failures, right? It starts to shift when you understand how internal and important confidence is to just your grounding. And I look at style as simply a tool to help you channel the confidence, right? Because sometimes you can utilize the style to give yourself a jump start.
Yes.
If you need it, right? Sometimes people often think like, oh, once I get confident, then that's when I'm going to redo my wardrobe and start to, I'm like, but does it look like that though? You would be surprised if you start to think about it as something that's just as important as getting your acumen increase in your trade. If you start to look at it as what are those steps, right? What are those steps that you're taking to become partner? Right? What are the certifications that you need? What are the courses you need to take? What are the mentors you're seeking out? What are the steps? You create a plan, right? What are you doing in order to ensure your confidence is also rising to these opportunities? Because what happens too often is the identities don't match, at least often in the women that I work with, right? They are C-suite partners, attorneys, anywhere from senior manager and above. And they're showing up to incredibly impactful spaces, right? Whether it's a seat at the table or they created a whole different community, right?
Yeah.
But what's happening is they open up their closets and they're like, I'm not that person anymore. I'm not the person whose confidence was less than. So I felt pressure to show up a certain way, right? To conform to a certain standard, to just walk the walk like everyone else, because I didn't really have my own confidence or my own identity intact. So I was just kind of moving to the beat of someone else's drum, right? Shift is happening. Your confidence is getting stronger. Like, I don't want to show up like that anymore, but I'm not sure what this new version of me looks like. I need some help, right? And then and that's where I'm able to help support some incredible women.
I love your definition of style as a tool, your description of style as a tool to channel confidence, a way to show what's already inside of you.
Yeah.
And it's understood how people can come to a conclusion of what does it look like. Often it's what does it look like to be a professional or to be a fill in the blank on whatever title, because there are sometimes seemingly unshakable stereotypes and archetypes of what that has looked like on the surface. And because of that, people assume, well, that must be what it looks like for everyone, where that's simply not the case.
Yes.
But it is that leaning into, this is who I am today. I am a professional. I am fill in the blank CEO. So therefore, who I am and how I am is all of those things. I get to show up as me.
Yes, 100%. Like I tell people all the time, as your career evolves, your style should evolve, right? Because it is literally an outward expression of who you
Of
are,
who you are.
right? So
Beautifully said.
it has to shift. So when you're first starting a first job, we've all been there, you know, even when you're going on that interview, you look out in the sea of black and gray and navy suits with one classic button that everybody got from Banana Republic or J. Crew, right? Or a hand-me-down from a family member, right? And everyone's like, oh, this is the one. This is very professional, right? This pantsuit is that is it. And this is it, right? And you're just gonna give you a nice small pump, right? And some pearls, and this is it. You've got it, right?
We won't call it a uniform, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close. Variations on the same theme.
Absolutely, right? And it's not anything wrong with that per se, right? Because people are so quick, well, is that bad? Is that bad? No, no. And I'm like, you know, don't look at things as good or bad. It's so polarizing. It's not necessary.
It's not necessary.
Right? And so it's more like, is that helping you be at your best, right? Is that showcasing you at your best? And as you start to, again, ascend and make different moves within your career, you start to realize, like, you know what, actually, you know what, my style and my energy, I'm really more of an empathetic leader, and I really lean into my femininity. So like pants, that's not my thing. I'm at my best in dresses. Interesting, right? Or like, you know what, I hate heels, but I think I'm supposed to wear heels because I have to be taller in order to have more presence, or I'm not going to be taken seriously. But the way that my feet cannot handle a stiletto, but you break your feet, you know, feel it in order to do so, to fit in. Unnecessary. Get a comfortable flat. Wear a great sneaker with your suit, right? Like the way in which leadership has shifted, you know, is also something that is reflected too in your style and your image, right? So this can also be seen as a very outdated view of a very siloed way to view professionalism. Release that, like completely release that, and begin to understand that your actually most powerful way to utilize your style is to inject more of your personality, right? Like when you think about any great leader, you might know someone personally who's a great leader at the company that you work for right now, or globally and highly recognized within your industry or field. What did they do to become that person? They had guaranteed they had a new way of looking at things. They'd offered a new perspective. They did something different than what everyone else was doing, right? So that caught the recognition of their peers. Everyone was like, go left. They were like, telling y'all when you go right. Everyone's like, nah, don't go right. You're like, go right with me. Like, you see that hill? That's it. And look at the terrain. It's crazy, right? But they did it. And then all of a sudden, people start saying like, wow, they went right. And look at what they're doing. They are really becoming a great thought leader, right? A great community builder, right? A great CEO, right? Amazing business success. Any great CEO of anything that we you know, pay attention to, whether it's technology, to healthcare, any industry, they went against the norm with their idea. They thought about something different. So if you know that great leaders are going to follow that path, no one remains like everyone else. So how can you visually, in what you wear, do that and think that you're gonna dress the same way like everyone else in the same uniform, right? The same black, gray, navy suit, and look like everyone else and become an amazing leader that really is set apart in their industry or in their space. You know, it just, when you start to understand and really observe these things, you start to see how image plays a part in all the different ways that people really make a point to be different. To show more of themselves and their personality.
image and imaging has always mattered. In fact, that was part of the message. That was how we ended up consistently with the Black, the Grays, and the Navy, because that was the image. And this is another thing about the beauty of time passing. In itself, it's not a guarantee, but the messages that we heard 20 years ago were different. And there was more of an emphasis on conforming because people thought that that was the way to be. Let us all try to be this same thing because that's what it looked like. Fitting in was the message, was the goal. No matter how uncomfortable it was for some people, it's because people really thought, okay, this is the way to be. We're all trying to be the same thing. And there has been a complete shift away from that. There's some of that, but it's not, leadership is no one thing. And it is indeed oftentimes the person who is going in the other direction that is able to pull people along, that unwavering conviction, like you said, the confidence to do the thing that is true, that is real. You know that you know that you know this is the right thing. People are not always coming along. It's not always validated from the outside in. You have to know, and you're doing it is then what takes people along. And this thing of it not always being validated is such an important part to know. Like you said, we have our ebbs and our flows. Everyone goes through it, and how you perceive so-called failure, like you called it. The way I said is everything is data, take it in and apply it, and then you can interpret it and use it the way that makes the most sense. But we also acknowledge it can be challenging. It can be that a moment where what you believe and what you're showing not being validated can be discouraging. We're human. And so we need those moments where we know what to do, where to pull from. Can you share a time in your career where being confident, having that unwavering conviction, as you describe it, I love that definition, share a time when being confident made a difference in your career?
Gosh, I mean, as a business owner, it's every day. And I laugh or chuckle because it's literally every day, but in particular, right, like when I am attending events, right, as an example, like marketing is so important. If you are running your own business in your company, marketing is the way you're going to reach potential clients, right? But it is very challenging and can be a very awkward thing to attend an event, walk into a space where you know no one, and say, okay, by the time I leave this event, I will at least meet 2 new people, which is kind of like my low-hanging fruit goal that I give myself when I go to networking.
But a goal.
It's a goal. Okay.
And once
that 2 has been reached, I'm like, right?
I love that. Walking in with a goal.
Yes. I'm like 2 people. But when I walk into these spaces, especially in spaces when they are more wealthy to do folks in the room, right? And then my imposter syndrome starts setting in, right? And this is, literally, this just happened last week. Okay, so it was a very fresh example, right? But I had a gala to attend, and I'm like, okay, there are a lot of, wealthy individuals in this room, and there's a certain eminence that you can feel when someone is, in a financially wealthy space, and, people are fundraising and you're seeing people donate, and I'm like, okay, wow, that's fantastic for this organization. But entering the room, right, I literally often do these 2 things. One, I set the goal for myself of like meet 2 people. And then I will go into the restroom before I go into the event or before I begin to actually speak with people. And I'll go into the restroom, I'll go into the stall, and I will say affirmations to myself. Right? And so I'll say affirmations, maybe sometimes mixed with a prayer, but I will just remind myself of like who I am. So I will say, like, you are an excellent communicator, you're an excellent networker, you know, you are excited to connect with someone here today who is going to make an amazing impact for your life and your business. There's someone in this room who you're meant to connect to, who you're going to impact in a really great way in their life, right? Like, you're in this room because you're supposed to be in this room. And I say, like, I am confident and cannot wait to have a great experience. It's going to be a great event. I take that moment to just like pause and reset myself from whatever, because there was energy coming into the event. And I do this networking event, speaking engagement, oftentimes with clients, like any time where I know, you know, nervousness, butterflies, I'm like, whoo, and I'm like, I gotta reset. That's like the biggest confidence boosting thing that I do, that changes me, that helps me, right? That helps me to then channel and be like, yes, okay, let's go in to this room, in this space, because there are plenty of other times where I go into a space not having done that exercise, and my mind is like scattered, my articulating when someone asks, what do you do? Or tell me more about you, because you know the question is coming. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you know what? And it's not coming out. And all of a sudden I'm like, what is wrong with you? Right? Like, okay. And, you know, or it's someone who I knew, like, oh, I wanted to meet this person, right? And what I am saying is not right aligning. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm blowing it. I'm blowing it. They're gonna be like that.
Which also doesn't help. You know, it's like if now you're getting to the, oh, I'm blowing it, that's not helpful either. Not helpful. Now you really do have to dart into that bathroom and take a pause.
You got it.
With the quickness. Now you really gotta find it.
With the quickness. Yeah. With the quickness. So yeah, that's and hopefully that answers the question, but that's what immediately, especially because this is like fresh, I'm like literally thinking about this as I was at this event last week ago, last Thursday, and I was like, I have to channel this in order to feel confident in this space. And it's often in spaces, again, where imposter syndrome or an awkwardness can set in, and it just shifts you out of remembering how great you are.
Yeah.
You know, because you're looking at in a room and you're thinking, well, everyone's so much greater, so much more accomplished, so much more wealthy than I am. So they're better than me. Right? At the core, you know, that is literally the subconscious, is like, there's something about them that means I'm lesser than. And no, I have to change
having those reminders. And yes, not only did you answer the question, you answered two questions, because talking about confidence boost was the very next thing. It's those recognizing that things can fluctuate. But yes, you answered the question about where in your career confidence has made a difference. And I love the point that you made, that as an entrepreneur, as someone who started a business, it's not a one-time thing. And it can really and truly be a daily thing, where the confidence to show up, the confidence to go out, does make a difference in your career. It can make a difference between your meeting the next person the right way, representing yourself the way that you want to, or not. And then the boost, taking the time, it brings me back to, I've carved out of it as a coaching model. You know, don't spread your panic. Registered trademark. Because these getting flustered not only doesn't help, but if you don't have the opportunity to pause, it really can continue to have you going in the wrong direction. So it is important to the power of the pause. It says, take that moment, pause, gather yourself, get the information that you need, and then move forward. And it wasn't on the list of questions, but imposter syndrome comes up a lot. Let's talk about this a little bit more. On the one hand, I've heard people say, oh, you know, it's this construct, it doesn't exist, it isn't there. On the other hand, hearing imposter syndrome described as, despite your successes, not feeling like you belong resonates with so many people. So the point is not about whether we agree on the term or not, but that what you described is very real for people, that they walk into spaces and because of the automatic associations we have, they have a feeling of, I don't belong here. What I am and what I have done is not enough for me to be here with these people, in a manner of speaking, along a number of different lines. It could be the impression of wealth. Okay, these are wealthy people. That means I don't belong here. It could be along the impression of career and success. Oh, these are fill in the blank of the titles, the accolades that these people have, the accomplishments. It is very real for people to show up either in those spaces or maybe have the opportunity and almost self-select out of those opportunities because of that feeling. That's a big part of the confidence work that I see is changing the narrative or grounding yourself sufficiently so that you don't walk yourself out of that room.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 1,000%. And, you know, one of the biggest ways in the space and style and image that I help, my clients are to really think about how they can strategically position themselves to boost their confidence, is by having what I call conversation starters within your outfit, right? So these are pieces that constantly will invite a compliment, spark conversation, right? So we all typically have that thing, right? There might be those earrings you got on a trip on vacation, or there's that one blazer that every time you wear it, people are like, oh, I love this color on you, right? Or a handbag, or whatever it is, right? But there's a piece that people respond favorably to, right? And it gets the conversation started, right? And it's such low-hanging fruit. And it's such an easy way for you to welcome someone to you in those spaces where you're like, I'm feeling uncomfortable because of, right? Fill in the blank of why you have this feeling. Right. And you need, instead of, sometimes instead of opting for a little liquid courage, right, you could really just allow a little bit of complimentary energy to come in for someone to just compliment you on your outfit and your look, right? And then from there, obviously you're going to say, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Perhaps you share if there's a great story behind the piece that you're wearing, or maybe you're like, oh, this is one of my favorite colors, and in some cases I tell my clients, man, transparency can go a long way in some of those things. I tell people, like, share, be like, yeah, this is one of my favorites because this is actually helps me have a lot of confidence when I walk into a space when I wear this suit. Oh, I love that. Tell me more about that. Right? Because when you want to have connection with people, sometimes you have to get beyond just the like, what do you do?
Yes.
Right? The what do you do? What's your role? The day-to-day, it's very transactional, right? It's very in, out. There's not a lot of depth or just relatability there.
Yeah.
But I love when you're able to enter into a space and just have conversation with someone about anything, right? Like, oh, this beverage is great. Oh yeah, I'm a martini girl. Like, I love this, one of my great go-to drinks. Or, oh, what do you drink? Whatever it is.
Whatever it is
I
that
just dropped off my kids. Oh, you have some kids. How many kids do you have?
Yeah.
Just general conversation to connect.
Yeah.
Then that's when people feel, oh, this is good energy here. Okay, so what brings you here to this event? Tell me a little bit more about what you do, right? So I think, like, look for those ways to have the conversation starters and think strategically about your wardrobe to include more of those types of things. You'd be shocked at how much people observe and see about the way that you present yourself in a space and how much they would actually verbalize it.
And to your point about going beyond the superficial and the potentially transactional, the truth can be quite disarming. You know, it's a
Mhm.
bonding opportunity. It's something that goes beneath the surface. And so it's not only disarming, but also bonding. It fosters connection. And a lot of times, no matter where we are as human beings, that's what we're looking for is connection. I love how you use an example as simple as what people are drinking, you know, what they're holding in their hand, or some everyday life occurrence, like I just came back from picking up or dropping off the kids. We're just looking for that connection. And it reminds us, and it's an important reminder, we're all just human after all said and done. That way the titles and the status, or what seems to be all of those things that sometimes people can carry with them in a very heavy way, does not become a distraction or a deterrent from connecting with someone, because we're all human after all said and done. And we one conversation away from connecting with people in a way that's very sincere and very true.
Absolutely.
You know, sometimes you're talking about the compliment as a way of connection, and that can happen very easily. It's really, like you said, low-hanging fruit. But some people are not really trying to have conversation. They're outside, but they didn't really want to draw too much attention to themselves. Let's talk about that a little bit, especially if you are out there representing yourself either as a business owner or in a leadership role within a corporation. The reality is that a lot of times you find yourself in spaces for the work that you have to do. There's the impact of style. It's going to draw attention. People may not want it, but it is a vehicle to the work that you do. How have you seen people owning that style impact confidence in the way that they show up, and maybe a shift from where they were kind of blending into the background and being comfortable with being seen?
You know what? It's literally that last part of what you just shared, being comfortable with being seen. And there is some inner dialogue in you that is really trepidatious about stepping into the spotlight, right? And I get really curious about, like, what is that? What's the story? What's the experience? Who told you you weren't enough? Because it's typically some seed that was planted from somebody else, right?
Yeah.
Has you feeling like, well, I don't want to be too
yes,
in the blank.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of fill in the blanks going on, right? I don't
Right,
want to be
right.
too much.
Too much is the number one.
Too loud,
Yeah.
too, right? If there's something, right? There's something there. There's something that has been shared that, oh, to do that is unfavorable, right? There's something that's going to negatively impact your career, right? If you're too.
Yes.
And I think that's the space of, like, you being able to say, is that true? Do you think that's true? And what does it look like for you? Because it's different for somebody else. So if you're basing that off of someone else, well, that's a problem right there, right? Like, what is it for you, right? And so, without a doubt, hands down, and my clients will tell me this, they're like, you know, Nana, I have to get comfortable with being visible working with you. And I said, you're absolutely right. Because without a doubt, we are going to increase your visibility. And we're going to do that because that's what you're telling me you want to do. Like, that's not me.
That's why you're here.
That's why you're here.
Yeah.
Right? That's why you're here. You're telling me that one thing about starting my own company, well, I'm doing a lot of speaking engagements for work, right? I want to have a promotion. These are all things that call on you to be more visible, right? And so, again, the career is evolving, the identity is evolving, the style must evolve. So what is hiding or not allowing yourself to be seen? How is that helpful to your goals?
Yeah.
Right. And so when you start to uncover that, you're like, okay, it's actually not. It's actually deterring, or it's keeping me stuck or afraid to make a move. Right. And then when you come to find out, you're already making the moves, right? You're already doing the things, which is why you're getting the call or the recognition, right? So the visibility is already happening. with your work, right? And so now it's like, well, the occasion's already there. The stage is already being set, but what does it look like for you? And I think that's the piece of really understanding, what authenticity is and looks like and sounds like for you versus others that we help clarify that, right? So for you, showing up boldly, that might be, just really saying like, I really love blue. So maybe I'll do, you got beautiful royal blue happening, or maybe it's going to be a teal blue, right? For someone else, they're like, let's go all the way. I want to do my African print dress and I want to have my beads. And like, that is for me.
Yeah.
Great. Both can work. Both can be professional, but both are professional, are leaders. Yeah. Both are strong. It's just different, right? And that's all based on the person. So, without a doubt, I always, my ears always perk when someone's like, I don't want to be too, and I'm like, right? Because that right, that's literally that conversation of the visibility. And I'm like, you do want to be visible, but you want to intentionally be visible like you.
Yes.
And that's the space that people are unsure of, like, what does that look like?
And in them finding it for themselves, they help other people to find it as well. But it does take what you described, challenging the narrative, identifying and owning that perspective shift, that whether you realize it or not, and it's not like it's one precipitating event, whether you realize it or not, you received a message somewhere along the line that told you that something that you did was, or implied that it was wrong, that it was not welcome, that it was not acceptable, that it was going to be detrimental to your success. And these are things that you take seriously because it can feel like a threat to your safety. It can feel like a threat to whether you'll be able to continue to work, and you want to be able to do it. And it's so easy to internalize and change and start outwardly showing those limitations. Putting those limitations on yourself that when you pay attention, were expressed externally. But it's that narrative shift that is important. And once it's inside you, that everything that I am is absolutely fine.
Absolutely fine.
Then it becomes unshakable. It might be uncomfortable in some spaces, no doubt. I think about the different events that I go to. I was talking to a colleague and friend of mine not too long ago about how, depending on the event, a formal event, so think gala, the way people show up kind of is tied to the perception, the perspective that they have on what is welcome there. So in certain events, you will see more of the monochromatic, or at the very best, even if it's color, it's solids. And then in other events, all the prints and the colors and traditional fabric across various heritages show up. And so it always begs the question, what was the message? What was it that people heard that affected how they showed up? And where are those messages continuing? Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's fascinating because, it even goes into, dress codes and the meanings. I shared a post about this not too long ago because, I have clients and they are going to all kinds of things. So whether it's business formal for work, or then there's a work retreat and they're like, oh, it's relaxed but festive. And, people get creative with these dresses. And I'm like, y'all, keep it simple. You're confusing your employees.
And what does that even mean when
Oh my God, I get so many, wedding invitations, just so many people are like, what is that? And I'm like, oh, it's fine. It's just business casual, but maybe add a pop of color, right. But it's like, but at the core, and I think this is something that's really important. It's actually one of the first things I do when I work with my clients is we go through clarity, right? And getting clear about what you want for your personal style, your image. What do you want it to look like, right? So we ask those really important reflective questions. So, when you walk into the room, what do you want people to say about you, right? What are 3 words you would use to describe yourself, right? When you're not in the room, what do you want people to say? Because a good majority of the decisions about your career are made when you're not in the room. So when they're talking about you, what are the things that you want them to be saying, right? And when you think about all these things, right, it's only going to come from some level of visibility, right? Like there's going to have to be visibility there. But when you start to also know that your role is coming to that place where it is garnering attention, and you know, like, yeah, I'm ready to keep climbing the ladder, right? It is inevitable that the way in which you carry yourself, your presence, your energy, your confidence, all of that comes into play and consideration, right? They are talking about how you make them feel. Typically, hands down on the work, you've got, like, the marks are there, the clients are happy, you've made the money, you've hit the goals, all the things, right? But the things that make the difference is, so how did you think they handled this situation? Right? Did they get frazzled? I think that was really challenging, but they had their composure, right? They gathered themselves, and is sexual. It becomes how. How did they do it? How did they handle this? How did they make the client feel? How did you feel about working with them, right? Are they memorable in some way? And when you're really clear about what your style is, what your image is, what your brand is, when you enter into these different spaces, it becomes so much easier to show up, because at your core, you know what works, right? So whether the dress code is business formal, casual, festive, you're not scrambling to figure out, well, oh man, this person's going to be there, and this is going to be a really important event. Our CEO is coming, so I want to make a really good impression. So maybe I should just go out and buy a new pause, right? When you're really clear, you're able to go into your closet, and it's more, okay, I do want to make a great impression. So, visually, do I want that to tell the story? So everyone's like, oh, there she is. She's the one in the purple top, right? Is it that, right? Or are you like waiting for some great FaceTime, and like you always wear glasses, so you're like, oh, I'm going to wear my really great signature frames, right? Or you're just going to go with a really great fit on all your pieces and make sure everything is just really tailored well, right? There's so many different ways to make the visual connection so that it's consistent, right? Because you don't want to show up as a brand new person every time you want to make a good impression, because people get confused. It's like, oh, a great impression. Be like, well, who's this person? Because I see you Monday through Friday. You don't look nothing like this person. But now all of a sudden, you're dressed up and you got... Don't do that. Be consistent, right? Be consistent in how you show up, and that actually speaks volumes.
I love that. I love the thread that you draw through consistency, because it's about you showing up as you, and that's really where the consistency lies. And it comes from something that you described, where you're not looking outside of yourself for it. You're looking internally. How do I want to show up? What do I want to convey? Because that's what you know, and that's what you can control, as opposed to looking externally, and not only looking externally, but also with a worrying or fear-filled mindset. Well, who's going to be there? What's that person going to think? That shakes you at your foundation. That's not grounding. It doesn't have the effect of coming from a place of your own strengths. And you touched on that beautifully, just in describing how your client, how this would-be client or actual client is walking into the closet, and what they're looking for. It's like, what do I want telling a story today? And what is that story? It's the internal, it's in you, and you're building from what's inside, as opposed to reacting to what's outside, which may change. It should not vary just based on, okay, this person is going to be in the room, therefore I'm doing this, but it's you. And that really is the consistency.
It is. And when you are making the shift and ultimately get to a place where you open up your closet and you know that 80% of what's in there reflects you, fits well, is great color combinations that you could put on a piece and you're like, absolutely, these work for me, right? So there's no scramble. Then it's just functional, practical. How do I feel? You know, am I
How
going to be
do I
doing a lot of
feel?
walking? Am I standing a lot? Okay, so I need to build this outfit around these most comfortable shoes, right? Like, am I going to be eating? I don't want anything too clingy to certain areas because I want to make sure I can eat well, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, then it becomes some more functional things, but you have the options, right? You're not in there scrambling because you're like,
Yes.
nothing here fits me, nothing here
Uh-huh.
reflects me. I don't know what to do. We got to move away from that, right? And so one of the biggest things when I work with my clients, especially my signature program, is really walking them through what I call the CKC method. So that's the clarity plus knowledge builds your confidence and
Nice.
style, right? And so when you understand what your style is supposed to be, and we get clear and we define it, and we create a mood board so you can visually see what it's also supposed to look like, then it's about more knowledge because people really are just unclear. You're unclear about what fits your body well, right? What your body shape is, how you can be styling pieces so that it's most flattering for you. What colors you're supposed to wear, right? And it's really not a supposed to, but what colors highlight you the best, right? What feel good to you,
Mm-hmm.
to you. So it's understanding color psychology and what colors mean, and then what looks great against your skin tone, what complements your eyes, your hair, your features, right? Really understanding those pieces and then understanding how to create those looks, right? So for a lot of women and a lot of professionals just in general, you know, you're really, you know, the time is not bountiful. So you are feeling the lack of time, but you're also feeling the decision fatigue, right? Because you're making so many decisions for work, home, etc. So, you know, I love to be able to help and assist and just be, let's
Mm-hmm.
say I'm just another person on your team to help you operate at your best so that when you open a closet, I've done the shopping. I've showed you the outfits. So when we work together, you just literally you picking out your phone, you've got this great tool. You're like, okay, well, I got a couple of outfits I can choose from here. Wonderful. Oh, okay. Oh, that one's at the dry cleaners, but I know I've got that top. Okay, I know I can easily pair these pants with it too, because I know what works for my shape, right? I know
Mm-hmm.
how to put them
Mm-hmm.
together. Great. Awesome. Good to go, right? But it's all the pieces are already there,
Yeah.
right? So it's a lot less stress
And you've taken away the scramble.
taking away the scramble. Yeah.
In us going through this, we've touched on a number of different things, your journey to this, but also articulating and kind of making the connections for people. Here's more than likely what you're reacting to. Here's how you can adjust for that. And that's another in itself, it's a toolkit for people to be able to pull
Mm.
from at any given time. And then you come with the specifics, the knowledge, the information. So now you're equipped to take these decisions and kind of tweak it to what suits you. And it helps you to show up the way that you want to show up, to channel your confidence. You've threaded this through, and I also love how you conveyed that it's not like it's a perfect steady stream, but it's about knowing what to pull from when you need it, knowing how and when to take your pause to take that scramble away.
Yes. Yeah.
With all of this, what you've done, what you're doing, how you're growing this message and support for the people that you work with. All amazing. What's your next bold move? I have to admit, it sounds like you're already in it, but
Mm.
there's always a next. What's your next bold move?
Yeah, you know, so so many.
I'm ready with the pen and paper.
Um, big bold moves are really creating I'm going to say creating, becoming a go-to
Mm,
expert for women leaders, you know, nationally and globally when it comes to creating spaces to support women in leadership in their personal
mhm,
and professional development. And I think that looks like creating programs, services, trainings that weave into the existing leadership development
mhm,
programs that so many different companies and organizations have. But oftentimes they leave out those quote unquote soft skills, right?
mhm,
That really make the difference in taking someone who you think you've identified as top talent, right? You're having leadership capacity and helping them, supporting them, to become at their best. And then they become a champion for your organization.
Yep.
Right? They don't hop ship because you're not doing and cultivating personal and professional development trainings that are relevant, right, to what they need now. So becoming that and offering those trainings and becoming, that sought after person is a huge goal of mine over the next year. And then also doing more work in space for our young girls and our and just our even Gen Z and intern community as a whole. And that, I just got that first job, right? And what it looks like for you to show up and feel successful and ready for that first job, right? Because we're seeing big gaps, age gaps between our Gen Z and our baby boomers and, and millennials, and figuring out like, this is not appropriate for work. And other people be like, well, leave me alone. I am living my best life.
Right.
I'm doing you cannot bound me by your rules, right? And there's this whole, conversation or lack of conversation happening, right? But a lot of opinions, a lot of judgments. And I'm like, man, we have got to do better about preparing people for the workplace.
Absolutely.
When you graduate from college, there is a big difference from how you move on a college campus versus how you move in a corporate setting. And I really want to be a part of helping to bridge the gap for young folks when it comes to how they create their personal brand and their professional image in the workplace. So that's another big move. And then we'll be on TV.
What does that look like?
That looks like being a style expert on, Good Morning America. I would love to be doing anything that sheds a light on really fantastic women in leadership, just like yourself, but on a global stage for others to hear our stories. We just need more of that.
Nice. So I'm writing it down now so that when you're doing that, we can come back to this conversation and then say again, remember when we were talking about being on TV? So now that you're here, and then we'll have another, I'm looking forward to it.
I am too. I am
looking forward to it. I have no doubt in my mind that you can do it. What you're describing is it's work that you're already doing. It's the opportunity for the stage to grow is what it is. And it started back when you styled that first person organically, and you've done the things to connect the dots for people in so many different ways. And I love how you've put the spotlight on style in that way as a way to channel your confidence and making those with the CKC model. You're already creating the programs and the structure, because as you start to call out those frameworks, those are the things that translate very easily to the workshops, to make those connections and have those conversations in spaces perhaps where those conversations have not yet been had, and then just to do it in your own signature way. So it's the stage that's changing, because you're doing you and you're doing this work already as you would do it. And I'm excited in advance for that next stage.
Thank you.
Naana, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time today. Thanks for the response on LinkedIn. It's beautiful work that you do. I know I don't even see all of it, but it's beautiful work that you do, literally, this external expression of what's on the inside. And I can imagine what your clients say to you on a regular basis as you help to connect those dots for them. So thanks for being here. Thanks for having the conversation, taking the time. Thanks for what you do. And I'm looking forward to those bold moves, what's next, and your stage growing.
Yes, thank you so much. This was wonderful. Such a just pleasant, easygoing, feel good conversation. So thank you for the work you're doing to grow people. Really,
my pleasure. And we'll do this again after you've been on TV.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait.
Naana, thank you. We'll end it here.